Good evening. I'd like to call the Conservation Commission and Inland Wetlands Watercourse Agency to order, the meeting for Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. We have a full board tonight. We have so there won't be any alternates seated. So we'll move on to approval of minutes of August 19th, 2025. Do we have any corrections or changes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So the new item, application for receipt and determination of significance, application CC number 25-20 for Adam Westhaver, applicant Riverbend Development, Connecticut LLC, owner for a wetland permit to grade and install drainage infrastructure in the upland review area in association for proposed development at 1503 Hot Meadow Street, Assessor's Map 105 of I04, Block 403, Lot 015, Zone B2.
Good evening. We do have the applicant here. I just have a few slides to go over the very high level view of the application. The permit is for tonight. It's for receipt of significance to the wetland watercourse area. It's a permit for grading and installation of a drainage system. As the applicant stated, the disturbance is approximately a half an acre in the upland review area. And there's no direct impact to the watercourse or wetland soils. It's about 50 feet to Saxton Brook. There's topsoil cuts and replaced 450 cubic yards, some 2,200 cubic yards in the upland review area, as well as a subsurface storm water infiltration. They outlined a robust soil and erosion control plan that you can find in your plans. It includes both silt fencing as well as straw barriers in that location indicated on the map, as well as temporary sediment traps, construction entrances with tracking pads, and upon finishing up the work in that graded area, the upland review area will be topsoil seeded and covered with the erosion control fabric. Just a few notes I wanted to make. I thought it might be helpful. I put it on your Dropbox. I made a list of the application requirements that you'll see in your section 7.5 regulations. I made it into kind of a checklist of sorts, so you can kind of go through and make sure that what you're receiving is a complete application. That's what I do when I review these types of applications, but I thought maybe it'd be helpful for you to see that as well. So upon that, we found that all the materials submitted do make for a complete application. They also included things like a wetland soil report, as well as alternative options to the project. Our engineering staff did a preliminary review of the drainage. They'll have comments for the next meeting. We did discuss kind of preliminary comments. There was no major concerns for wetland impacts in terms of drainage, and he thought the proposed soil and erosion measures were adequate. We spoke with the applicant about this as well. Next step, so if the wetland approval is received, the project will be going to the zoning commission for a site plan review. And with that, if the applicant would like to come up.
Ready?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Phil Doyle. I'm a landscape architect and urban planner. You probably have seen my partner on a number of occasions, Terry Hahn. We have brought this application forward for Adam Westhaver, who's right here. And Adam has a contract to buy 54 acres of land that was represented on the graphic from Griffin Land, that was successor to Culborough. And with me, we've got Brian from Cole Engineering, who's done all of the civil work, and we've got Ian Cole, who's our soil scientist. And if we can, at least put all the plans in order, but what we were just looking at is what's on the screen little bit of a small scale version of this. The 54 acres that we're talking about, it's a bigger piece of property. Dorset Crossing, and it comes in behind and closer to me on the right-hand side of the sheet. I'm to the north. And up Meadow Street, Route 10 is right at the bottom. And we've got the big Y here, plus we've got the International Skating Center. Probably know that Adam and his partner, they own the skating center, the town owns the land. And they have recently been completing an addition that was done to the skating center. And the skating center, after years of languishing, they brought it back to life. It's very busy. And that's part of the driver for the interest in doing something on this property. And the property is bisected by Saxon Brook. And that's really what we're here to talk about tonight. There's large farm fields to the north and to the south. And we, a year or so ago, year and a half ago, probably, Adam, you and I went in and we received from talking to planning and then in front of zoning, we received a B2 zone, business 2 zone for this portion of the property, 15 acres. And this portion of the property, similar to the skating center, is remains zoned industrial. And the industrial use, that industrial zone allows through site plan approval recreational uses similar to the skating center. So part of the idea had been that Adam has been playing with is the development of eventually a commercial village on the north side of the brook. On the west side of the brook, potentially an expansion of recreational uses that might be related to the skating center. And if things go well, at some point in the future, could be 5 years from now, or it could be 10 years from now, we're really not sure. We may be trying to connect Dorset Crossing with the driveway for the skating center by putting an internal driveway through. And when we do that, we have to cross the brook. We're not anywhere close to that at this point. And the first step in starting to develop this concept of a village is the introduction of a hotel. The skating center is generating a tremendous amount of business with all kinds of skating, both figure skating and hockey. And most of the teams that are coming in are staying over in Windsor. And all of the hotels that are over by the highway, the various, I think there's you got the Marriott over there. You got the Marriott Courtyard.
Yep.
And then you've got another 2 or so just on the other side of the street. And people have expressed interest in actually staying in Simsbury at a modest price hotel. And so the idea is to start with the development of the hotel. And the hotel itself is 300 feet from the closest point of an inland wetland. But when we were taking a look at this, our thought had been that we probably should not be just plopping the hotel here. We should probably be developing our internal loop road so that at some point in the future, hopefully in the next year or two, we can start to fill in the internal space in that area with buildings. And the concept and the process we have followed is that Brian's office has gone through and has done the utility analysis for that and the impervious surface analysis, so that we know exactly how much stormwater has to be maintained and controlled, and we can handle the majority of the earthwork at this point. So the hotel would be placed here. It's in a bit of a cut. We'd be filling in this area, putting in a driveway. The driveway at this point would primarily be for emergency services, fire access. And then in the future, we'd be filling in that space. The inland wetlands are shown in that outline in this blue dash line, and then the upland review area is in that tan line that's immediately around it. I think I'd like to have Ian explain what he has. This is a map of the entire property. It's slightly rotated just a bit of the street with Hot Meadow Street over towards me and the Saxon Brook running through the middle. So
Sure.
Before you begin, sorry, do you know how to put the projector on for this? It's like locked and I can't do it. If you can see, okay, that's fine, but I did have slides that I can also put up there.
did you have all the ones I sent?
I do. I have all the ones you sent. I just can't get the computer to show.
Shoot, because what's wrong?
So it's when I hit projector, it's not allowing me to mirror my computer, my screen. Yeah. So
Sorry.
that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, that's why I bring boards.
Yep, and
Just
the
in
board
case
is fine. I just want.
Everything falls to pieces.
And the board doesn't have electricity, so. For the record, my name is Ian Cole. I'm the soil scientist of record for this property. My involvement in this property dates back to 2022, when I did the original delineation for the feasibility study for this property. And then I was re-engaged this year to do a wetland evaluation and provide a report to the commission, which is in the file dated August 19th, 2025. And that report details out the description of the site, wetland functions and values, impact assessment. There's a bunch of pictures in there also, if you have time to look at it. Helps give good context. As Phil said, excuse me, the property is 54 acres in size. You got the International Skating Center to the south, Dorset Crossing to the north, that big solar farm, Tobacco Valley Farms uphill to the west, and then the east is bookended by Hot Meadow Street. Saxon Brook bisects the property. The western side of the property, about 30 acres is wooded. It's primarily like a white pine, hemlock, ravine kind of forest area. That core forest is going to remain intact. The core of the activities is in the 7.5 acre farm field that's in the northwest corner of the site. Saxon Brooks is flow through perennial water course. The western side of the property, you can see in the report, this was originally dammed. There's a concrete dam that's long since failed. And this was an old farm pond that's long since silted and it's kind of reverting back to essentially like a lot of willow saplings and stuff like that. So it's slowly reverting back into like a shrub swamp. And then Saxon Brook, as it flows here, it's pretty straight and linear. It's an old farm drainage way. Stream's roughly about 5 feet wide. It's very shallow. It's less than, you can walk right through it fairly easy at any point. And the corridor between the two fields is very scrubby and brushy. There's a lot of, it's the who's who invasive, everything from, a lot of honeysuckle, bittersweet, things of that nature. And then, kind of that disturbed tilled area zone. This wetlands has been used extensively for irrigation. If you walk down through here, there's a lot of pumps and pipes and stuff that have been used to fire water cannons through the farm fields. And there's a notable sewer easement that runs along the southern side of the field. The soils in this area, this is all glacial fluvial soils, outwash soils, stratified sands and gravels. The upland area is all Hinkley soil, kind of in the core of the development, and then a big band of Merrimack soils. These are very sandy soils, very good for infiltration. As you can see, as the engineer will talk about, stormwater really focuses on infiltrating. This site's great for that because you have very good sandy soils. The bulk of the development up in this area is roughly 300 feet away from the wetlands. But the boundary of where you'll have the grading for the site, especially in this corner, comes down to probably 50, 60 feet. And that's the backside of the grading. Keep in mind, these are areas that have been tilled over for, who knows, 300 years, probably. These have been farm fields. You remember, I think, was it 2021, there were 5 kind of iconic tobacco barns along the road that were dismantled and taken off site. The proposed project, I guess in terms of functions and values, I probably should talk about that. This wetland is basically an expression of groundwater discharge and recharge, being that there's you have about a foot of organics that overtop sands and gravels. So you have, interplay with the aquifer in this area. The site is in an aquifer protection zone, but the site is serviced by a city sewer and water. So you don't have to worry about, those pollutants in that sensitive area, because it's a closed system. So the wetland's primary function is groundwater recharge and discharge, and then general water quality properties, everything from sediment and toxicant reduction and uptake, and then also some slight importance for stormwater attenuation, primarily more so in the upper limits, where you have some constricted flow with regards to that dam that's there. The site drains to the Farmington River, but it's disconnected from a culvert that's at Hot Meadow Street.
So how's it drain if it's disconnected?
Well, it drains to a culvert, but it's disconnected in the fact that it's not a contiguous body. So this is piped for probably 150 feet before it discharges again to another channel that goes out to the Farmington River. So this site sits above it. It's not like part of the Farmington River floodplain. So
Is it the culvert?
Into us.
Yes, a while ago, yeah.
are they replacing that culvert? Are they gonna do
They
some-
replaced it,
work
yeah.
there?
Yeah.
One, but it probably hasn't been maintained in 50
Right.
years. It's probably way past its service life. I remember driving, I saw the DOT was over here doing some survey work. So I assumed that they were doing that or some kind of road improvements. I think it's important to know, just for the commission's determination here. The site mostly is balanced. There's because the site's kind of level where they're developing, it's going to be a large scale trucking operation here. No clearing is required because they're doing it in the field, so it keeps, fragmentation issues and all of those conservation issues. You don't have to really contend with. It's keeping that core forest block intact. There's no direct discharge or direct impact to any wetland resources with this part of the project, with this phase. And because of that, there's not gonna be any change in the functions and values of what's going on 300 feet away from here. And with the minor encroachment that's within the upland review area where it was previously disturbed, the projects on that backside slope, they're gonna put a heavy conservation seed mix that's gonna have a lot of pollinator habitat, a lot of wildflower habitat. And that will help give some more pollinator and food sources as opposed to kind of, the invasives that are going along there, which, don't offer much more than cover. They're good for protecting the integrity of the stream. But, the wildflower zone mix here will be an added benefit for the attributes of the stream corridor. I think those are the major
Don't we,
points, but
don't we? One of the things with the erosion control that we've looked at shows that we will be netting as well as seeding with a wildlife next to the slope right there here. And I had suggested as part of the planting plan that we put some plantings along the middle of that slope. But not in the wetland. Back at the toe of the slope. And you had mentioned in your report the invasive species.
yeah, there was a request for, could you soften up the edge as you transition from this graded slope to the existing vegetated buffer along the wetland boundary? And quite often what I find is when you come back and visit these developments after that, you'll plant a bunch of shrubs along this toe slope, and all the vines will just basically tear them apart. And unless they're maintained, and no one's really gonna go down that slope to maintain. So I think what's probably a better course of action is you seed all of this, and then in your maintenance plan, you have an annual mowing so that you keep the area free of the woody invasives that would otherwise kind of just over the next 20 years migrate their way up slope.
What I would like to do, if we could, is be able to start removing the invasive species. Because I tried to walk along that wetland corridor and I was just torn apart by all of the Japanese knotweed and the what we call it, the Oriental bittersweet. So that one of the things I think we'd like to build in to the approval is to go through along that wetland corridor and start to remove the invasives that are in there.
I would suggest that if you were to go in there and remove them by starting off with mechanical means to like open up the physical space. In that instance, then you could replace them with native plantings. But you'd want to kind of truthfully open the area up to see what you had for space to back infill it, so that you had something that was meaningful.
Yeah, it's something I think we want to talk about, because that the area I think has evolved through lack of maintenance. The farmer with has tilled very close to the brook and then has sort of let things take their course down there. And it's really pretty messy.
It's typical edge habitat, where you get that thicket.
Yeah, needs to get cleaned up. So that's something I think we'd like to think about, starting to remove the invasives from that.
Yeah,
space.
my recommendation for something like that would be to have, that as an order of condition, and then a standalone plan.
Right.
That was approved to the satisfaction of the commission and town staff.
But that's why I wanted your input on all of that, because the soils are so sandy. We'll be setting our temporary sediment traps at the top of the hill. Will be some cutting and some filling. The site is balanced, and we want it that way. So we will be infiltrating the stormwater during construction and following the construction. Other things I wanted to mention, I know that the staff sent us over a draft lighting regulation that the Conservation Commission was looking at. And we've gone through it in detail. And in terms of the site issues associated with that, there's no, we don't have any issue with anything that's in the draft. The lighting plan that we're proposing, the poles are all downlighted. They are all dark sky compliant, and they're mounted at 16 feet at the height that the town will allow us up to 20 feet. And the K value is 3,000. So it conforms to what the standard would be. I think I sent in a note back that I'm not sure, because there's a provision in the regulation about window lighting. I'm not sure if we have to ask our architect when we get there, how that would relate to the building itself. But from the site point of view, we'd be completely compliant with the proposed regulation. And one of the things I'd like Brian to talk about, you got to understand what we're doing with the drainage. Give us just an overview of where we are here.
The record, Brian Hanfield, full civil survey and project manager. So I'll talk a little bit about both all of the utilities, and then specifically storm drainage. There's public sewer, water, gas, electric, low voltage, all in Dorset Crossing. That's where we'd be connecting from. In this loop road that Phil described, we basically made provisions to put all of our mains along that road, so that in the event in the future, if there ever is a connection here, if there's ever development on portions of the site, effectively we're not going back in and disturbing any areas unnecessarily. Right, all of those connection stubs, everything would be provisioned for future development. And then all of our utilities would come off of those mains internally in the site to service this building. Also, we did look at storm drainage specifically for what we would call this kind of first phase. And that is the underground infiltration system that's proposed. It's relatively large. Looking at this, and again, being that one of the major functions and values of this wetland corridor and of the brook and everything is recharge. We felt that this was that would be the most suitable solution for the storm drainage. Also, bigger consideration, 2024 water quality manual, what they require for water quality volume, what they recommend, what their recommendations are for low impact development, and specifically infiltration. And that is was the driving factor behind this design. So as Phil mentioned, with those temporary sediment traps, taking in the stormwater as the building's being built and as all these things are being completed, all of that water would infiltrate to the ground. These are all A-rated soils. They all have hydraulic ratings of A. The actual soils during the soil testing phase of this, they're all relatively uniform, thicker topsoil layers, 1 foot up to, I believe it was around 3 feet, and some pits, 2 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet of topsoil on test pit 2. To a loomy sandy layer underneath that, and then the deeper layers being a workforce flat sands. Again, all the soil testing, we went down 8 or 9 feet in most of the pits. No ledge, no modeling, no signs of groundwater, and any of that. So with all that being said, this was kind of like site perfect criteria for an underground infiltration system. And that's what we proposed. It's 3 rows. It's around 318 linear feet of units. Those will actually store up to the 100-year storm. There is some discharge at the 100-year storm mark. As these units all fill up, water will discharge through pipes into an infiltration level spreader. That is basically 4-foot concrete gallery, similar to what for regular underground storage. We prefer to use the concrete, just a little bit more stable, especially when you're exfiltrating all of this water out of these systems. And essentially those are buried in the ground. So even as the water is going to its point of exit, we're still promoting infiltration for low levels. The top row of those infiltration systems there's holes through the sides of them, is left open, and then the bank is all done with modified riprap. What that allows the system to do is fill up, and then slowly as it's filling up, the water is just kind of leaching through that top level of holes into that riprap going down the bank, reduces your risk of erosion on the bank, of any scouring, things like that. And again, since obviously our discharge point would be the river, that's kind of the main concern, right? We don't want to get sediment, we don't want to get any material flowing at any velocity down this slope. So that's what we've done. And again, looking at this system is sized to handle all of the stormwater produced from this site up to the 100-year storm, still meeting a 0 increase in runoff off site. And then we did look at the site as if you were to then start developing anything internally, some pieces down here that we could basically replicate that same design, and that provisions have been made we've looked at that even through locations of all the catch basins along the roadway to make that work and continue to work even in future phases without having to do any major redevelopment of the already completed areas. Again, doing everything in our power to basically not work backwards. So we did the work backwards in the design phase, design it for everything now, scale it back to what we need, and then where's the best place to put these items so that we're not disturbing the wetlands or anything else down the road. Again, water quality was I don't know if it was the first or the second most important part of the functions and values of the wetland. And so all of that underground storage provides a very large amount of water quality volume because we're not taking it. None of this water is directly connected to a stormwater system. So we're not taking it and just piping it straight to the Farmington River. We're allowing it all to infiltrate. So the water quality volume in this case with an underground system that does have a discharge, you take the volume from the bottom of the system to the bottom of the pipe where the water would be allowed to come out. of the system. In this case, the required water quality volume is 11,168 cubic feet. And our provided water quality volume is 21,276 cubic feet. So we're providing 191% of what the state of Connecticut says the required water quality volume on a new development would need to be. So I know that was a lot of probably very technical information. If anybody has any questions or people
Yeah, question. For the volume, it sounds good, but from a perspective of removing contaminants and things, you know, you got all the roadway that, you know,
Yes.
we know what winter's like here. Materials used during winter for ice and stuff like that. What are the measures going to be in place to filter that out?
So we're effectively using the infiltration system the same way that naturally would occur. So using all that sand almost is basically acting as a sand filter, as a giant sand filter. So there's not necessarily what we found and what the state of Connecticut, at least in the drainage design manual, has found, and I believe the biggest driving factor for some of these changes are originally the way it used to be was we would require oil water separators or the hydrodynamic separators or all of these different mechanisms to be put in place before the water discharged from the site. And that was great, and it sounded great, and it worked really well for the first, depends on how much the site was used, maybe a year, maybe less. But then it became a maintenance issue. So when you rely on something that requires a lot of maintenance to operate and function properly, it's not really the best practice. So what they did with the new water quality manual was say, so what can we do as natural low impact development strategies that don't require a lot of maintenance to still allow these things to function? So the way that the manual physically says it is if you're able to retain all of your water quality on your site, there's the expectation that through these design practices, you've already met those removal and contamination, unless you were working in a site with that, which you would consider like a high pollutant load site. So unless you were working at an auto body repair facility, much larger chance of oil spillage or some sort of industrial site per se, then we start looking at other modes, and actually even then infiltration is not even ended. In this case, this is a much less intrusive use. And so they would say it's that you would be removing those pollutants just through the natural processes of the infiltration.
So a follow-up question is on the sort of parking areas, is any of that pervious like parking, or is everything kind of just paved over right now?
I believe everything's designed as just regular impervious pavement.
Impervious pavement.
Impervious pavement.
So one thing that's come up in the past with these large pieces, even though you're capturing all the water, you're concentrating all of the runoff, like as you're just talking about, in one place. And so that's where all of the perk goes, and it captures all those contaminants. So I was just wondering, when you guys are evaluating all this and you're thinking about how you might replicate it, did you think about options that would allow for some of the roadway or things to be more pervious? So you're having some of the drainage or some of the washout of these chemicals going into a broader area. And that's just a question. I'm not saying it has to be now. Wondering.
So for example, on this site, when we looked at the overall, and as we're developing it in future phases, for example, the next set of infiltrators would actually all be along the roadway in this location. And then as you work down the hill, because of topography, naturally, the next items would be below that. So you would end up effectively spreading all these infiltration systems out on the site specifically. That is the only location where we're actually infiltrating everything.
Right.
It's a catch-22 in my personal professional opinion. If you have one location that you need to monitor, maintain, pump sediment out of, and look at, it generally is an easier process than if you were to spread that out. Like, let's say there's the 3 rows there. you were to, and it's a relatively large system, if you were to spread that over the site in 6 different locations, now 6 different locations that all get monitored, all get checked. Can it not be done? No, absolutely it could. We could also look at taking catch basins and basically putting dry well bases on the catch basins instead of standard bases on catch basins. That will allow for infiltration at each of those, basically the sumps of each of those and the area from the outlet pipe down to infiltrate some of that water as it goes. We've also had situations where we put in perforated pipe in different locations. Again, there's a maintenance component to all of that. I'm not a huge proponent of pervious pavement. It's a very good concept, but back to your point, then you're almost forced to only use salt on the road, because if you use sand in the winter, well, now you're clogging up your pavement, and now you've just increased your maintenance bill substantially, having to vacuum out all the pavement. So generally speaking, the developers will then not use the sand and they'd switch to chemical instead, which is, yeah,
So about the parking lot area, there are various islands I saw on the map. Will they be the raised desert islands that nothing grows in, or will they be the sort of the more recessed rain garden? Because I know sand is really good at filtering out a lot of plumes. It's got a very small surface area, but eventually gets clogged. But plants are even better at reducing, improving water quality. So are you considering using the more of the rain garden style beds?
So we do have a small rain garden area in this location. That I don't believe this is all curved, right? This is all curved.
Yeah.
So this really more or less is just collecting the swaled water off, not necessarily the pavement.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about this, I mean, one of the things, you often see in a parking lot is, the islands, and then they plant trees and they live like 2 years because they don't get any water. But, parking lots are hot. I know the water will be cooled once it gets into the ground, but you have an aesthetic component there too, that makes it much more healing.
Effectively eliminate the curbs on some of these islands.
And have the water actually feed into the plants. If that could be, designed that way, it would serve 2 purposes. It would spread out the infiltration, but it would also clean it up before it gets into the sand. And the excess would go into the storm drain.
I think there's some opportunity for that in some locations, certainly.
There are locations, we've taken a look at it. In this location and through this area here, we could pitch the water off and set up. This is a debate about how we should handle it, and considering we're putting a large investment into the infiltration system. We stuck to the infiltration system. We didn't try to double up, but in theory, this location and this location, we have looked at, and we could incorporate the rain gardens.
You'd have the habitat, you'd have the water quality improvement, and you'd have aesthetic improvement rather.
The other thing that we've looked at, when you think about a master plan going forward, around the other will then create a series of smaller commercial buildings and develop green space around those. And in all of those areas, we were looking to make a more intimate rain gardens and make that a pedestrian walking space. That's the long-term plan.
And getting back to the question about salt, one of the things we've been talking with other applicants is about, having a salt management plan. So, pre-treatment and, to minimize the salt use. And sometimes salt is used sort of as a traction device rather than an ice melting. So, there could be a plan put forward, so, what type of training, staff would have.
Yeah, and again, it's much easier to let the sand be the traction device.
Yeah.
Let that collect in the sumps of basins and vacuum those out as it is to try to clean salt. That pervious pavement and ground is.
Nothing's going to stop the salt.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we have had a number of experiences with forest paving. The first was many years ago over at Fitzgerald's. When that was redone, we did the parking lot in front of the Fitzgerald's in the forest.
Remember that one?
And we let the main driveway stay in the paving. And unfortunately, the maintenance there has not been right. I don't think they've ever gone through and vacuumed. Continues to function, but I'm not surprised because University of New Hampshire developed the system, have a lot that they've never maintained and it continues to absorb water, but it's not, it's a high maintenance. We also used it for the Aldi parking lot over in Canton on Route 44. Aldi maintains it. It depends on who is operating the facility, and it's a lot more involved in doing the vacuum.
Yeah.
That's the downside.
I noticed in the report, in the soil report, you talked about a self-sustaining meadow mix or whatever. I was intrigued by that. That's because of the annual mowing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the annual mowing and it's kind of, the standard protocol what you see kind of along the edge of commercial developments like this these days. Where you get this, midsummer, you can't even walk through because it's chest deep
Yeah,
full
yeah.
of, thick herbaceous vegetation. You'll see, the butterflies and all the dragonflies and whatnot floating around and a lot of songbirds in the tracks. But it keeps out, the autumn olive and the multiflorals, because they can come there and mow it down.
Yeah, we were all very pleased that someone came forward saying that they'd like to remove them all before. And good luck, but it would be nice to have you said a standalone plan.
Yeah, I think it really is like it's a lot of times on the side is kind of what I would tell a client is there's a specialty vendor called All Habitats. They're done.
Yeah.
They are something of this scale. You really want to go to them and say, can you come out? And they come out to the site, they would do a site walk with you, and they're really, hands-on, and they in a meaningful way could eradicate something like this from the site. But saying something like that, it's really like to your point, it's a standalone plan.
Thank you. Yeah, that was music to our ears.
And another key component of that as well as Ian described, is that vegetation grows up pretty high. So at the bottom of the slope like that, or below the slope, trash debris isn't going to make its way all the way into the grove. It gets stuck at a point. It's easier for staff on site to then maintain and keep clean.
I like the conservation seed mix. Then I noticed that there's an athletic field mix. Where is that going?
I missed that.
There's an athletic field mix and a meadow mix which was specified on the drawings for our horse pasture. I was wondering why. That was in our drawing. That was in the drawings in very small.
I know,
print.
I mean, I think a long time ago, maybe one of the concept was that on the other side, we were going to have sort of like a horse barn type thing, have horses out there.
Yeah, okay, I was
Yeah,
where does that go?
and that may come up on the other side into the woods
Okay, good,
later on.
good.
Sort of like an Ethel Walker type feel.
And then still on the planting plan, there's a bit of a planting plan for and I just noticed a couple of the species. We're trying to encourage everyone to try to use wherever they can native species. So there was like a boxwood and little leaf linden and forsythia and the grass, the Penicillium turquoides. I'd like,
It worked we are using around the building in some areas, some more fountain grass.
yeah, any chance we could use like little blue stem instead? Yeah,
Sure.
so
Make a
we're just trying to
recommendation.
encourage people to use as many of the natives as possible.
We have no problem with that.
Good. The only other thing I had was about the lighting. The lower the bulb, the lower the temperature, the lower the Kelvin, the better. I know, standards keep changing. But anywhere you can put in motion sensors or timers, so the lights are not on all the time, or at
Well,
least.
it's an interesting question.
Well, I think that's standard now.
Yeah.
It's part of the proposed.
It's part of our
Yeah.
proposed regulations. That's the sort of thing that we'd like to see.
That's an interesting question. I think that what we are doing, the only town that I'm aware of that actually asked me to produce 2 lighting plans is Canton. And they asked for a lighting plan, normal lighting plan that says during business hours. And then they asked for a plan, this comes through P and Z, that for after business hours, what type of lighting
Yeah.
is left on.
Yeah.
And it's a real good question, because you don't need all the lights
No.
on all night long.
No, and I mean, even if it, there's a way of, you can reduce the intensity as well. So you still have light, but, and then down washing the building rather than up lighting. There are all sorts of things that we're coming up with in our plans, but are also in the dark sky international books. And they're just good forward thinking lighting plans.
No, it's a very, very good question here, though, and the thing we'll have to think about is with a hotel, people coming in.
Yeah.
You may want to rely on some.
I think close to the hotel, you have to have some sort of sensors
Yeah.
in there, because you have to have safety, you have to take that into account, and all that.
But, there are lots of
Yeah,
different
we can
ways.
balance.
Yeah, there are lots of
Yeah.
different ways of going
Yeah.
about that. And
But that's all possible.
Yeah.
We could do that.
those are the fantastic. Those are my questions. Any others?
This was agricultural, you said, were these tobacco fields at any point? It was tobacco.
Yep, a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here, so.
Yep,
and
yep,
that's what.
yeah.
That's like, they had pumpkins or squash there.
Butternut squash, I think, was the last one that we had out there.
But it was all owned by Colbro, and it was all tobacco.
Yep.
Also,
Yep, at some point along the way.
and the bank from the. I guess it's not a parking lot, but from the road down to the brook, what's the elevation change there? It didn't seem like it was a lot, but.
Well, the site just generally sort of slopes down to there's not a big.
So you're not gonna make it flat and then a big,
No,
it's just gonna be.
Yeah.
Well,
we want to try and keep everything as natural as possible. We want to try and build into the land. I guess that's one way to do it, or with the land. I live in the town and I don't want to clear cut everything and just put buildings up. We want to take and just sort of work with the land that we have and build it.
So the topography's gotta pretty much stay the same down to.
As best we
Obviously,
can.
the road is- yeah, the level.
Without being a fact, we have something, bombing downhill.
Yeah.
Degrees or something like that.
Yes.
You'll end up with about a 10-foot grade change between the area outside the 50 feet or so outside of the brook channel back to our toe slope. And then we're going to be going up at about 10 feet. So the biggest slope is going to be about 10 feet.
But so it's not really.
It's not a huge.
Yeah.
We're trying to,
It's not like a balance or.
Yeah.
Putting outlets.
Or next to Big Y, they had to put us a big retaining wall
Right,
in the back. You want to avoid that, cut into it.
no, we're not going to be doing that.
Question in regards to the underground, the stormwater detention system. Is that sized to only accommodate the hotel, or is that sized to accommodate the hotel plus the restaurants, plus the buildings, plus the additional parking lot space?
So that is sized for just the hotel
For
and
just
this
the space.
existing, basically just what we're seeing here on this page. The analysis we did take into account everything else. So the hotel is that, then the restaurant spaces, the other building spaces,
Would have
parking lots
the
around the edges would be another additional couple of rooms and of those, that same system.
It's like the little yellow doghouse stuff. Is that what we're thinking?
Essentially,
Shake it back.
yeah. Yeah.
So if you did build those extra buildings, the parking would go on the opposite side?
I believe the master plan had on both sides. So there was parking in that next phase would be on either side of the street. The infiltration units are basically under that set parking area. There will also be parking on that internal side and on the external side where those units are. So those are already designed to be H1 loaded, are designed to basically have parking lot on top of them, if and when that phase.
Gotcha.
Oh, I did have one more question.
When Adam
Oh,
and
sorry.
I,
No, go on.
with, a year and a half ago, when we sought the rezoning, the both the planning commissions and the zoning commission had been hoping that we would be developing a village here as opposed to sort of a big strip commercial development that is typical of what's happened in the past in North Simsbury. Because all the zoning was just B2 right along the street, so you ended up at Wagner's and everything else just along the street. And this sort of gets questions about, you know, how the drainage works and all. I know we looked at, sent along to the town staff in the last day or so. Hopefully that happens there. So. How the alternatives. Alternatives really came out of what we studied. Studied initially. We could have, as Brian was saying, just said we're plunking a hotel there, but if you do that and you don't think through all the consequences, we'd come in and we would probably say, gee, we don't even need an inland wetland permit. But down the road, we would need an inland wetland permit because we'd be coming closer to the brook, and we'd have to figure out what we're doing with the rest of the drainage. And we might be making mistakes in terms of placing, let's say, a stormwater system in the middle of what otherwise might have been a village. So we rejected the idea of, as an alternative, of just taking the simple way out and just putting the hotel in place. And we also took a look at what is a village. And we took a look at developing a parking core with buildings around the perimeter. And we decided that we might consider putting infiltration in the center or putting stormwater basins on the perimeter, the stormwater basins that would be closer to the brook, that might have an overflow and a discharge into the brook. And we rejected that because for a couple of reasons. One, we didn't want to have direct discharge into the brook. And the other was, we just didn't think that made a village. We wanted to make a pedestrian walking space. And the idea that I think Adam has had is that he sees this as sports related, whether it's going to be physical therapists or whether it's going to be sporting goods stores, all kind of could be golf shops, could be anything that's related to sports, but all tied into.
Well, just a place of being, I think Simsbury calls it a sense of place where you can go in there and you can walk around and you can enjoy it. You're not you don't have that mall feeling. Walking, you want to walk by and you want to have the different gardens that you walk through. You want to walk under trees, you know. I don't want to be associated with a place where it's just strip mall, concrete and buildings. You have to incorporate the nature that's around you.
Like it's across the street, like College Highway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Phil's the lead land planner that we have, but also behind the scenes, I'm working with a world-renowned architect that's outside of the country of architect. It's trying to flow with the way that we can make this, you know, a sensible place. You can walk through it. We don't want cars. You know, we have to create the corridors for the cars to go through because we want to keep them off 10 and 202. You don't want to create a log jam and congestion, but at the same time, no, they're gonna have to go through it slowly. You also want to create a space where people can walk through, and where we have the sewer that's installed right now. We're talking to the town, what we'd like to do is present like a bike path. You'd go through and you'd come across the bike path that you have on the other side, come across the street down by Antonio's, and sort of flow up and go along the river, bike up there. And, you know, you have the tall grasses like you spoke about, you know, you have the birds and the butterflies, and you have the nature that's out there. We could incorporate, you know, a fence line with horses or something that's out there that just brings you into nature. That's kind of what we're trying to create. That's the feeling that I'd like to put out. You know, so you build within the nature of itself. Trying to do.
So that's where we are. We're waiting for the engineering review, and we're hoping that the Conservation Commission and the Wetland Commission will get determined that this is not a significant activity, and that we could meet with you at your next meeting, and hopefully have the engineering review and be able to move forward.
I have one quick question.
Certainly our goal.
I appreciate in your application that you talked about the NDDB. So diversity database. It says here in your paragraph, the project disturbs more than 5 acres of general permit for stormwater discharge related to the activities will be required in the state. So does that mean that's going to be something that you're pursuing along with working with the town?
Eventually, we will be filing for well, we got two things. We've already, I've already filed the NDDB, and I'm waiting for a determination. And eventually, before we go into construction, we will be doing the filing for the stormwater general permit. With the deed.
Yeah, it does go. It goes all the way across the whole property.
Yeah, what,
That's correct.
Cool. From my experience with sites like this and NDDB sites, what you'll probably get is, you know, the ubiquitous eastern box turtle, maybe spotted turtle because it's right next to the river. And you'll probably get some hits for things like mussels or bats or invertebrates, just because it's connectivity with the Farmington River, because those things are often associated. So what you typically see is, because this site is within 500 feet of the Farmington River, those polygons encroach, you know, on the other side. But, you know, keep in mind when, you know, they do the review, it's going to be pointed to the farm field that's been pre-disturbed. So typically what you see is Deep will come back and say, you know, there might be turtles here, there may be, you know, bats in the woods, but, you know, we're not clearing trees, and typically your ENS controls double as your exclusionary fencing. So my guess is, sight unseen, we'd probably get back an energy response at 2 or 3 species, and the project would adopt all of the recommended best management practices so that those species were protected. And again, you know, there's no direct wetland disturbance, so there's not like there's any impact to wetland dependent species here. I think, you know, in a nutshell, the project, as you say, will have to get those construction permits and do that rigorous consultation with Deep. A lot of times those consultations don't involve necessarily a soil scientist or wetland scientist, because, you know, there could be, they're probably going to be upland related species on this site with regards to that review, is my guess.
Yeah, and the general permit for stormwater related to construction activities, it would be regardless of your disturbance area, because it's such a large site. We would be focused on creating basically another report. So we have our stormwater management report that breaks down and outlines how we're handling the stormwater. Then you would also have to create another plan, and that would detail how you're going to handle that stormwater and limit its impacts off-site. Typically showing your discharge points, your discharge locations. There's all of the monitoring requirements for that. So in this case specifically, your outfall location is what they call it, or your discharge point, would basically be that infiltration level spreader. You'd have a significant rainfall event. They outline what a significant rainfall event, I believe the last time I checked, it was like 0.1 inch. In this case, you would have no discharge from a storm that's only 0.1 inch on the site because of the volume of storage in that system. If you had a system that was significant enough, and you could actually monitor that, you'd be monitoring it specifically for turbidity. So with those temporary sediment basins, if they were producing a discharge, if the underground system was producing a discharge, you would take a water sample of that, put it into a turbidity meter, see what the turbidity of that is to make sure that you're not increasing the turbidity levels of the ground. And then there's it's usually about 200, 300 pages of documentation between the monitoring, the record keeping, all of the wonderful things that go into that permit. That whoever is doing the construction on site is required to keep track of, as well as whatever reviewing engineers continuing to monitor that through that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, from a conservation, or like a commission's perspective, if you trigger the stormwater flow control plan and the monitoring that goes into Brian's point, they basically, an engineer's gotta come out here every week, regardless of the rains, to make sure the ENS controls are all in place. So you just have a much more higher level of monitoring process throughout construction until the site stabilizes, and even beyond stabilization. So I think they need to demonstrate that the site's stable for 2 growing seasons. So like, if it's not stable in the fall, then that means they gotta go a whole nother year of monitoring again. So the new guidelines really add a lot of monitoring onto a project.
And to add on to that, so our approval, we can write in the NTDB and making sure that our report to the zoning commission has that element on it so that they know it can work into their conditions and to make sure that best practices are they use.
But then also when we do the approval, can we, I know Marjorie had some good suggestions for native plant substitutions. We would write those in as well.
Right, so I would ask Marjorie to email me your recommendations and then we can add that into the conservation side.
Thanks.
Yep.
So right now, what you're proposing is is alternate C. Is that what you're? So. It's just the, that's what you're. That's what you're.
It's the hotel.
Just the hotel and the certain feature, but not.
The hotel, the bill, it's not the whole.
Not the whole thing. That's
Okay.
alternate B was the whole site.
Right.
Correct, and we presented that just because we wanted to show you what the alternatives were. But the application is for the Loop Drive parking in the immediate area of the hotel itself. The overall grading to balance it within the contract limit line and the stormwater utilities. All of the other utilities come out to the Port Dorset crossing.
And that's where the access will be through.
Correct.
So
We have 2 access points from Dorset crossing and all the utilities come out here because you have everything here as well. And most likely in the future, as we grow, that will continue to connect to Dorset crossing.
So we're still waiting for the engineering.
Right, he'll have formal comments.
So we'll put off any just comment or any motion to that.
We can determine it's significant or not significant. He did say, the comments that he don't seem to be major instrumental. So I'm not sure that would.
You're different because I. Further discussion.
Well, so I think because this is a large project, the question is whether, there needs to be a public hearing within this committee, or there's gonna be a public hearing in someplace else in the zoning, because I'd have to say that the impact on the upland review area is minor.
Right.
So what's really driving it is the size of the project and when is the appropriate for the public to involve. Since this is a wetlands commission thing, you would think that in general, if we aren't really impacting that, so the public hearing would need to be in this one. But we've had issues like this in the past. So I think that's really what we're asking for. The next one's a public, this is part of a public hearing and we have the discussion then. Or not, and I don't have the guidance on that. In the past, because it's a large project, we would do that. But usually there's more involved on the wetland side.
Would the public be happier having the ability to say whatever they want to say?
Absolutely, but again, it's a matter of having the public, have access to say whatever they want to say, but again, it's a wetlands commission piece of it. If zoning was gonna have an open public meeting, then that would fit better there. There's no reason to have 2 of them. Sometimes it's only us. So that's.
Everybody, yeah. So how does the commission feel about? Do we want a public hearing for this, or do we want to just move on? And a significance of this?
I would say that this would be more of a zoning thing than for us.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's been farmed forever.
Yeah.
And I hate to say, Culver wasn't exactly the best land steward. Let's be honest about it.
Very delicate statement, right?
Yes.
So.
If there's like significant land movement, I would say yes,
It's
but
outside.
Yeah.
they're really keeping it pretty flat.
So
I think we would get a lot of comment. Should be better heard at zoning.
Yeah.
So, all right, so seems to be a consensus. We don't go for public hearing. But are we ready to do the motion for significance? I would entertain a motion for significance. No,
You mean to have it be non-significant?
non-significant, yes.
Yes. Does anyone want me fast for sure?
Want to try to do it for members, see if I do it right.
One of these days, I'm gonna figure out how to work this. I'm just gonna walk right now.
And I'll start writing this out.
Well,
That might be,
yeah,
you said we always get jammed up on this.
I'll move that this is. That this is
Regulated.
regulated activity. It's regulated activity because it falls within the upland review area, but it's non-significant. And that we adjudicate it at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Second.
All right, Jason, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Better these.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember that wording about 2 weeks ago, I'm like.
You gotta get nailed down.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Regulated, but.
All right.
Beginning of the year, I get sick every year. Coffee open house every year.
You didn't have a cough with kids.
That's pretty good. I held it in.
You were good then. You was, I sat there both sessions. So.
All right.
Good night.
So the next item is public hearing actions on. So now we're on to designated agent actions, another reports.
Yes, I just have one. And it was a culvert maintenance replacement at Pilfishire. It folks wanted to take advantage of the driveway. So it's an unmapped wetland area, but I went into it, it looked like it had scouring, so it was an intermittent water. So they did that work already and culvert replacement.
That was
It did say, they were seeding it.
Yeah, and.
Yeah.
Are they going to be conservation?
They should be, yes, but I'm going to email, yes, I
Yes,
talked
thank
to
you.
him.
All right. Good.
Oh, and then.
Yeah. So.
The next item, so the third party peer review, town staff has been working on and put out. A request for qualifications to engineering and environmental firms. We've received responses, and these would be when staff commissioners. Both in this group and zoning as well, when they decided they had a complex application before them, they would deem it so. We have these list of these firms that we found, we vetted them, and we have 3 that we are asking to be on call. So when it's deemed complex, we would call these 3, ask for requests for proposals, bring those forward to you, and you would select one. We figured this can cut down on the timing of the process because without it, we would have to do a request for proposal, which takes a couple weeks. And we're in crunch time when the public hearing is happening and the time amount for that. So I just wanted to bring everyone.
So if I understand, because most of some don't think. So these would be firms that we could, so we got a very complicated application,
Yep.
which we've had. And we could call on, RFP, one of these firms, but they would come in as an expert to help us
Yep,
sift through the information.
It would be a third party.
Okay, and they would be
Able to respond.
neutral? Are they a neutral party?
Yes.
Or are they, okay, so they
Yep.
would come in as a neutral party, and if we have questions or we think something's wrong, they may correct us and say, nope, this is fine.
Yep.
Or if we miss something, they may say, well, you know, this was buried on page 117 in the third paragraph, and you know, we're bringing this to your attention because it's important. So it would be like that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
This would be paid for by the
Yeah.
applicant, that.
By the applicants.
Yes.
Okay, and would they'd be able to respond in a typical time scale?
Yeah, and so there are the firms that do this
Okay.
type of work within the time frame.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, and so the earlier we decide that it's a complex application, obviously the better. Have that time for them to work on it.
So if we're trying to do that as an example, would we be? When do you think we'd be doing that? After the sort of first review or after the second?
Well, I imagine, tonight, if it was, the first presentation, you determine it significant, you can deem it complex at that point.
Right, okay.
Or the next time, or the next.
Or it becomes clear because
Right.
often somebody comes in, we make a bunch of suggestions. And then the next meeting is when we kind of know what's going south.
Exactly, yes, it can be at either of those meetings, I imagine, yeah, and so remember, so you deem it complex. We do the RFP, we select them, they have to go to Board of Selectmen, even though it's the applicant that's paying for it. They do have to go to Board of Selectmen for approval, so that eats up some time as well, just so you know the
So
whole.
the sooner we do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but so it definitely sounds like it has to go to the Board of Selectmen. That's a week process.
Yeah,
Probably a week.
right, they meet every,
So you would typically think this would happen when you're gonna have a public hearing and there's gonna be a lot of presentations, et cetera.
right.
Okay. So do you have an official procedure for how we determine it to be complex, or are we just gonna?
So the wording in the town code is when the commission deems it complex,
Complex,
yeah,
okay.
so zoning commission has specific parameters.
Okay,
Conservation does, well, it's not, it's more, so we have more scientific and technical
right,
when we deem it complex. And that, it could be a discussion amongst,
Sure.
have that discussion with each other. And then make a determination. My last item is the update on dark sky lighting. Finally, it is going for public hearing on October 20th. It went through the first initial presentation with zoning commission. They scheduled it for public hearing. I also did a presentation at the planning commission and they had a positive referral for zoning. So now it's finally the last step.
That's awesome.
And Leo Smith also had comments. I put it in your Dropbox if you wanted to take a look. The red wording I put in the text is his suggestions. So, and that's all I have.
And Conservation Commission business, we don't really have anything on, though I know Spotted Lantern haven't seen any.
I saw one in Farmington yesterday.
That's not.
I gave it a good squish.
But you can also see, this time of the year, you can see the tree heavens
Oh, yeah.
throughout Simsbury, and that's something that we should do. But I can put it on the website.
On the website, yeah.
Because that attracts us on the data as well. And I'm happy to report, I did bring home the knotweed injector from. We carried it as a garden tool, it was under $2,000, they sent just one.
See, I thought you made it in because I always watch to stop a smuggler. I did not see you on it, so I was pleased.
I didn't go through the whole, this is what you do, you check it, it just says garden tool. and-
Wonderful.
So, it's a big
Mercury's on America's Most Wanted.
Yeah, so that's just happy to report. Any other, Bill Fisher, I just saw that, that application. There will be walks, the Simsbury Land Trust will be doing walks up on Telfordshire property up off West Ledge. If you haven't done that, it's really interesting part of history on Simsbury. They're gonna be, I think there's 3 of them, they're coming up in October. So look for the Simsbury Land Trust. Yeah, and it's a great time, and I love the fact that it's called Pilfershire because Simsbury pilfered the land from Canton. Had been Simsbury, they gave it to Canton, but they pilfered it back. So
Okay.
great part of Simsbury history. Yes. So great job, go. It's neat. There are all these cellar bowls, all these farms that are up on top of the hill. Any other thing? That's all right. A motion to adjourn. Do we have? Second, all in favor? Great. Thank you, guys.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth, and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.